Prominent, for perfect metering, the specialist for water treatment and fluid metering technology. We develop and manufacture individual techniques and technologies for all applications that require measuring and metering of liquids. Clean water is the result of complex treatment processes. That's why there's such a wide range of applications for our metering, measuring, and regulating equipment, as well as our various treatment and disinfection systems. Prominent provides a comprehensive assortment of equipment and technologies that are perfectly attuned to one another. Our specialty lies in offering ideal solutions for all process steps in the food and beverage industries, which comply with the highest hygiene standards. As a leading provider for the swimming pool sector, Prominent ensures efficient, state-of-the-art water treatment. The results are always perfect. Crystal clear, sterile water everyone can enjoy, such as in swimming pools, water parks, hotels, and spas. Prominent technology is also used on cruise ships for a wide range of water treatment tasks. The chemical industry places increasingly high demands on product safety, productivity, and performance. All of our diverse products meet the most sophisticated demands for dosing equipment, and we also offer top-rate consultation and service. Prominent has also responded to the growing requirements of the oil and gas industries, with robust and compact metering pumps, particularly for the high-end sector, that are suitable for use under extremely tough conditions the world over. The origins of Prominent and our core competence lie in the development and production of solenoid metering pumps. We have grown by adding innovative products in the area of metering and regulating technology, and have successfully expanded into the water treatment and disinfection markets. More than 2,000 highly qualified, motivated employees work day in and day out to create the best solutions for your unique tasks. We remain true to our tradition of excellence. Prominent can look back upon 50 years of experience and success. The company was founded in 1960 by Victor Durga. Today, Victor Durga's sons, Andreas and Rainer Durga, share responsibility for the company. We see the ongoing education and training of our employees as an important investment in the future. Our specialists receive their primary training in-house. In our modern training center, we offer educational programs for employees as well as customers. This is how we ensure the optimal transfer of information and make sure our customers are always up to date in the proper use of our equipment. Prominent stands for innovation, quality, practicality, and customer focus. We provide optimal solutions for our clients the world over. A multitude of new product developments have made us the world leader in the area of microprocessor-controlled, solenoid-driven diaphragm metering pumps. Thinking globally requires a global commitment. With 55 wholly owned subsidiaries and 60 additional representative offices, Prominent is active in all of the world's important markets and in more than 100 countries. On-site service is not a luxury, but a central factor in our success. This benefits our customers the world over. Our customers demand more than just perfect functionality. Enthusiasm for creating the technologies of tomorrow is what drives us forward. The result is perfect equipment, acclaimed product reliability, and holistic, highly efficient solutions. We are dedicated to constant improvement. We will continue to research and develop new technologies and systems. It is our commitment to offer nothing but the best. Prominent. Always one idea ahead. We are perfectly equipped for the future.
Swadika. Good afternoon, good morning, Magandang hapon, Assalamualaikum, and Xin Chào to all of the audience who is with me today. Welcome once again to the webinar, which is sponsored by Prominent. My name is Rose Chitanwat. I'm going to moderate the session today. May I have a little bit of housekeeping. The program will include the two presentations by our expert in the poultry sector and the expert from the water treatment sector. So there will be two presentations altogether and followed by the question and answer session. After that, there are the group of networking group that will be organized into the country focus, which is we already sent the invitation to all of you that prefer to be in the networking group during the last part of the session. And if anyone yet to register for the networking, we are going to put in the chat box on the your preferred networking group that you can register later on. All right, so come to the session today. You can see the topic already that I would like to thank you on behalf of Prominent and Dr. Sabir from H&N that you joined the session today. The managing key essentials, improving poultry production, which is going to be a very comprehensive session by each of our experts. So the first one's going to be our expert from H&N International, which is on the key targets in layer management in hot climate or tropical zone like what we are now. So I want to introduce a bit on our speaker, Dr. Sabir Abe. He is the Managing Director of H&N International GmbH. He is a veterinarian specialized in animal production from University of Zaragoza from Spain. Dr. Sabir spent his expertise and learn a lot in Southeast Asia. He's joining Novus in Europe and moved to Southeast Asia. And since 2017, he was joining H&N International Group, and now he is the Managing Director. It is our great pleasure to have him with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, I will pass the stage to Dr. Sabir to brief you on the key targets in layer management in hot climate. Sabir, over to you.
Thank you, Rose, and thank you for the sponsors to invite me to have this talk. And I'm going to start with my presentation. So let me share. And there we go. Well, today, as Rose introduced my topic, it's time to talk a little bit about some of the key targets in layer management in hot climates. We have to say is that, hot climates are always going to be a challenge from the point of view of the production or productivity of the birds. So we have to realize is that there are a lot of decisions that we can make when we start the business of layers or when we are in the business of layers. And let's review some of them. And then probably we can have a further discussion with the questions and answers. So we have to realize now that the genetics has evolved pretty fast in the last years, especially since there is a lot of genotypification, PCRs from the point of view of that technology that has introduced together with the all selection methods. Therefore, now we see that in the market, we have hens that they can achieve the 100 weeks of age and they are still having a good production. And we can see that the brown and the white birds can produce more than 29 kilograms of eggs. Remember that I always say it is the hens don't produce eggs or numbers of eggs, they produce kilograms of eggs. All the hens, they have a genetic potential of producing certain amount of kilograms of eggs, and with the management and nutrition, with light management and nutrition, we can transform those 29 kilograms in a lot of eggs or bigger eggs, because remember is that one egg depends also on the size. So that's one thing that we have to take into account. But also we have to realize is that these hens, and when we talk about my 100 weeks and they are still in production, they are marathon runners. So that's why I put this table on your screens to see is when we are talking a marathon and we want to have to be high productivity, we really need to have a good conditions for that production. So what you can see here in this table are the world records of the marathon. And as you can see, all of them, they are achieved in not severe conditions. Seems that the Berlin Marathon in September, the weather is very nice, the conditions are very good for really achieving the world records. Okay, so what we have to realize is that when we have in hot climate conditions, the marathon runner, that is now our modern layer, is going to suffer. So we now need to work in ways of mitigating this. And this is something that you know and you experience here in Southeast Asia. I've been already 10 years traveling around Southeast Asia, and I know very well that I live in Thailand, so we have the month is hot, and hotter, no? So we know that in the conditions, the hens are going to lose, when the hens go beyond 25 degrees, the productivity is going to affect it in different ways. We can have lost production, we can have more mortality, but in somehow, we know that it's not going to be easy to achieve the same performance as we can have it in a this kind of 24 degrees conditions. So why is happening this one? Because there is a combination of why, and we will see a little bit of physiology, but we know is that as the temperature increases, and also if we put together that the humidity increases, there's going to be a big danger from the health of the birds. The birds are not going to be focused on producing. That's what we want. They are going to be focused on surviving or getting rid of the heat. As you can see at the beginning, after 27 degrees, okay, that's the ideal temperature. But once we go beyond 27 degrees, then we will see some effect of the feed intake. Then if we combine it with, even if we increase, if we keep increasing the temperature, then the birds are going to start feeling worse and worse, and they want to survive, so we are going to have mortality. So we have to realize is that not a hot climate is not a comfort zone for the birds, and especially when we combine with humidity, is going to be also a huge, even bigger challenge for the hens. So, but here I want to show you this table because you can see is that, for example, we can be at 33 degrees, but the humidity is 50, and we will be in a conditions not so aggressive for the birds. But we also can be at 20 degrees with 80% of humidity, and we are going to be in very extreme conditions from the birds. So we have to realize is that humidity and heat temperature go together, and we have to realize is that how we can mitigate that part. So we are talking here about management, okay? And I think management, or a management decision, is to decide what kind of housing we are going to have for our hens. I can imagine that, I know that buying a closed house or investing in the house is not cheap. It requires a big investment, but at the beginning. And this investment, you have to realize is that it's going to be, let's say, expand, or you are going to qualify this expense in 15, 20 years. So if we really make a math of what is the impact of the housing or the cost of the housing in the hens, we can see is that it goes as the third expense, almost the 7% of the cost. And in this case, it's fixed cost. That means also including electricity. So even the impact on the investment, it should be a little bit lower. It's in the housing. But we know that this 7% has a huge impact in the rest of the productivity, mortality, feed intakes, issues, diseases. So we have to realize is that we are talking about management. The first management decision is the type of housing that we are going to do. Because once we don't create these conditions that we are keeping the birds in the high temperatures, one thing that we have to realize is that the birds are going to stop eating. No matter what breed, what miracle or product we can put in the feed or whatever is the solution, there's going to be a feed intake decrease when we go beyond 26 degrees. So that means that if we don't compensate at a certain point, automatically there's going to be a lower performance. And even if we try to do a lot of things, we're never going to make the bird feel as comfortable as when it's below these 26, 25 degrees. So think about this. And here is that your decision that is about the type of housing that you are going to make has an impact in your cost of the production. When we have higher temperatures, the birds, as I mentioned, they are going to eat less because they are focused on surviving, painting, these kind of situations. So the bird is eating less. What are we going to do? We are going to call the nutritionist, hey, give me a more concentrated diet because my birds are not eating because it's hot. Good. Nutritionist can make a more concentrated diet. And then we will say, look, with a more concentrated diet, my FCR is better. I said, oh, my FCR is very good. Well, but it's not about FCR. It's about the cost of the production, how much money you are going to make with that diet, that you are asking to the nutritionists to concentrate because your birds don't eat, because you decided to just cut a little bit in the cost of the housing. So look at this one. Very good FCR, yes, when the birds are eating 105 grams, but the cost of the production of per dozen from the point of view of the feed is going to be really expensive. So when the egg price is very good, well, it might not be important. But when the raw materials are expensive and the egg price is not good enough, is when we are going to start suffering. So we need to think in this way of some of the decisions that we are taking about housing, they will have an impact in the profitability of our feed just from the beginning. What kind of things we can do? Okay, let's say that we don't want to invest in a closed house with the tunnel ventilations, with the last systems. Okay, I can understand that, but we have to do certain minimum things. At least we have to make some insulation of the roof. There is some options that we can do painting, we can do some insulation material that it will decrease the temperature feeling and the level of temperature in the house. Of course, if we want to invest more, we can do some water sprayers of the roof and we can continue in that path of investment. But at least we need to do something at the level of the roof, Do you like to be under the sun full day? The hens either. So you can expect these hens that they are in the cage, that they are getting the whole day the light, or at least part of the light in the morning and through the whole light. Are they going to enjoy having the sunlight just going directly to them? We are going to lose performance in those kind of houses. Look at in the other picture. You see that the house is, okay, it's an open house where we can see these kind of houses around the world. But look, do you see any hen, any bird? Do you see any bird, any hen in the left side where the sun is shining? No, because nobody wants to stay under the sun. Nobody of us, unless I don't know, unless we are on the beach, but not. We don't stay also too long. So, as what nobody likes to the sun on their eyes, we need to think about creating shadows. We have to avoid, at least as a minimum requirement in hot climate conditions, is to avoid the direct sunlight into the barn. Just because we don't like it and the hens don't like it, and it's going to be something that we can do in very easy ways. We can do with a typical shadow, or we can create this kind of, build this kind of curtains that they are really cheap. These are small investment, but it's going to be very profitable in the long term. Also, we need to work in the density. Do you expect that you can put the same amount of birds per cage when you have 22 degrees always, or 30? I don't think we can. We know that, when we put more birds, more heat is produced inside of the farm. So if we don't have a good system to get rid of this heat, we cannot house those birds. So here are some of the recommendations that you can see in the different temperature conditions that I know this is not good to see, and I know that sometimes we said, okay, I should put one bird more because I want to make the housing more profitable. But sometimes what we are doing is we are creating more problems than the ones that we are solving, and that's a slippery slope that we start only from the beginning, from the start of housing. Saying this, okay, I talk enough about the decisions about housing and the impact that it can have in the profitability of the feed and the density. So if whatever our conditions are, if we are in hot climate conditions, we need to address and we need to manage the light program in hot weather. The first thing that we need to realize is that it's going to be more difficult to make a good pullet. And the pullet is the base of a successful production. If we don't achieve the body weight of the pullet in every stage of the life of the hen, we are going to have a problem in production. All those problems that you see about prolapse, late start, eggshell qualities, I would say 90% of the times are related to pullets that they didn't achieve the body weight during rearing. During rearing, I didn't say at the end of the rearing, during rearing, because the development of the pullet starts from day 0 and ends up at week 16. So as you can see, it's important to have a slow step down if we see that we cannot achieve the body weight. And also something that we can do is we can give a midnight snack also in rearing. I know that in production you do it quite often, but also is something that you can apply in the rearing, because in this way we know that it's going to be cooler, and we have to adjust, of course, because we don't have enough. Sometimes we don't have enough lighting time, but this is going to be a very good tool also for achieving the body weight in the pullets. And in production, you know very well, the midnight snack, what we are doing is we are going to feed the hens during the night when the egg production is happening. So we are helping to have some compensatory feed intake. In this way, at this moment where the egg is produced, is going to be critical, especially from the point of view of eggshell quality, because the hen is going to have access to calcium. And this is something that we cannot go against the nature. And it's very clear is that when the temperature increases, the feed intake drops. Whatever we do, I mean, there are things that we can reduce the impact, but that's something that we cannot go against this reality. Okay, so also we know is that as the temperature, as the feed intake drops, also the maintenance needs will increase. Maintenance needs are those that the one that are related about surviving or related to surviving of the bird, moving, eating, behaving. But now we know is that beyond 26 degrees, we will see that the birds are going to start painting. They are going to start flapping. So that requires energy, and that's a lot of energy that is going to be taken from somewhere, and from somewhere, from production needs. So here you see some effect that we are going to see. We have that at 20 degrees, more or less. I mean, we have just the, I would say that there's a flat, we are going to have the normal, that's the thermoneutral conditions. Every time that we are increasing the temperature, we are increasing the needs of energy of thermoregulation. So with those needs of increase of thermoregulation, let's go of what is going to happen. This is more or less the needs that you need. I mean, the birds are the energy partition of the brown birds, most of the very similar also for white birds with different numbers, but the concept is the same. So as you can see, is more or less roughly the 65% of the energy intake by the bird, it goes to maintenance. At the beginning, as you can see, we are going to have a period of time for growth, because it's when we are going to have the sexual maturity, but later on, the rest of that 65% is going to production. So if we have birds painting, if we have birds that they need to thermoregulate, they need to get rid of the heat, what is going to happen? The bird is going to take energy for production and use it for maintenance. So right now, what we will see is, and what you usually see is that producing big eggs in hot climate conditions is very difficult. Why? First, because the feed intake is limited. And second one is whatever they are eating and whatever the energy are eating, most of that energy is going for maintenance. And what it is left, it is used for egg production. But what it is left is less than what it should be, because they are painting, they are using that energy for thermoregulation. So the bird keeps producing one egg, because this is one of the things, the beauties of the modern layer. They keep producing, but what they will do is they will shrink the egg size, because they don't have enough nutrients for that, because they've been used for the surviving situations thermoregulation. So this is something that it goes into a challenge. So the first thing that we can do from the point of view, as we have a drop of the feed intake, and from the management point of view, it is okay, let's go to the nutritionist, and we have to establish a feed target. The first thing, or the first job what the nutritionist has to do is, it has to establish the energy requirements and amino acid requirements, calcium and phosphorus. Once we have that one, then we have to decide, okay, based on the temperature of the farm, based on the temperature that I have in my country, what should be my feed intake target? Probably here in Southeast Asia, we will be talking about between 100 and 115, depends on the season. Unfortunately, as I said, 110 grams is going to be a feed that is going to be more expensive, but at least if I'm able to make that my bird eats 110, I'm going to be sure that it's eating the energy and the required amino acids, calcium and phosphorus, also vitamins that they are needed. But you can say, okay, I make that one. But remember is that it's not the most profitable decision, because in this case, it would be cheaper and more profitable for your company if your birds were eating 115. You will have the same production, the same energy intake, but that energy that is needed there, it will be used for producing eggs and bigger eggs. We can adjust the feed delivery. We know that in production, there is a pattern that most of the feed intake or most of the nutrient intake, it's happened during the afternoon. And in the morning, we have a 40% that is going to be used for, let's say, part of the recovery after the night. So can we adapt our feeding pattern to the temperatures of the farm? We know always is that at the morning, we are going to have a more, let's say, lower temperature. Then during the noon, we are going to have higher temperature. And then in the afternoon, we are going to have a better options. Well, that's something that we have to work with our lighting program, where we can work in this way, because, I mean, it might be more interesting to have a production a little bit later on, but this is something that we need to work and work with your people, your team, how you can adapt and if you can use it in your advantage. Also very important from the point of view of energy and reducing the effect of the heat, adding fats, adding oils in the diet will reduce the internal heat stress that is produced during the metabolism of the nutrients. So in this way, what we are going to have is we are going to reduce the heat stress that is affected by the metabolism, but at the same time, the addition of fat is going to have a spare effect in the amino acids. As you can see here is when we are adding additional fat, we are going to have more egg weight. Why? Because the amino acids that before they were using in the diet of 1.1, both diets, they have the same energy. The amino acids that they were used for different type of maintenance and productivity, they are available in the one of in the diet of 3% of fat, because fat is used as an energy source, so I have more amino acids for building, for making a bigger egg. So now we go to different tricks, things that we can do from the point of view of feeding strategies. We can increase the particle size, so we can use crumble feed, because in this way we are going, I mean, whenever the bird is eating, at least it's eating most of the feed, or let's say some little peel of the feed that is going to help to have a more uniform feed intake of nutrients. However, if we go with crumble, just remind you that the birds, I mean, they will need a coarse particle calcium carbonate during the afternoon. So if we do crumble feed, might not be the best technology to have that one included. So we need to add a coarse particle of calcium carbonate during the afternoons, so the birds can have additional calcium in the gut during the night when the eggs is in formation. Also important is to use this sodium carbonate, bicarbonate, for avoiding the alkalosis that we know that is generated during the painting. We can increase the percentage of the general percentage of the vitamins in trace minerals, because, I mean, the feed intake is reduced. So in the long term, I mean, it can have an impact. Remember is that the vitamins, a deficiency of vitamins or trace minerals is very difficult to see it in the short term. You're always going to see the problems in the long term. We can use organic trace minerals because they are more available. That's another option. Vitamin C, we can add it in the feed. It's not usual to find it in the premix, but that could be one of the things that it is shown that it can help in heat stress conditions. But as you can see, all of these solutions are costly. So I'm not giving you cheap solutions right now. So I'm sorry, because there are not cheap solutions when you are fighting the heat. I mean, just think about us. If we want to avoid the heat, we just put the air conditioning, and it's not always cheap. And another part that we can do, and this is going to be related to hot climate or any climate, is about water. If there is no water intake, there is no feed intake. So you can see in this an experiment that it was done. They kept the hens at 32 degrees, and it was given two types of water, 32 degrees at 27 degrees. And as you can see, those that they could drink fresh water, they were able to have a better production than the ones that they didn't get fresh water. And this is applied to production, but also rearing. Just remind you little, brooding. When you are brooding, you are keeping the birds at 35 degrees. Remember, you need to change the water and it has to be fresh. Because if you are not giving to those chicks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days fresh water, they will not going to like to eat because it's not fresh water. This is in layers, but it also applies to the pullet. So remember in both scenarios. So saying this one, we have to keep the water fresh. So the first thing is don't expose the water tanks. Okay, there are different technologies. The eldest, I mean, you can see you can make an underground water tank. There are other things, but please, I mean, I don't want to, you have seen several times the typical water tank in the middle of the farm at the top, black, and the whole sun is hitting on it. That shouldn't be something, I mean, that should be something that we have to change, okay, if we want to have a good fresh water. We have to cover the pipes. I mean, if we can have a nice pipe, a nice tank, but then if the pipe goes under the sun, it doesn't make sense. Just try to be logic. We can improve from time to time the flow of the water so we can fresh it. Can we use ice from time to time to cool down the water if we don't have any solution? But I mean, as you can see here is some of the solutions or some of the tips of managing that I'm talking could be short term. They are not cheap. And I'm also others thinking about long term. Everything on the way to try to mitigate the effect of the heat stress that is going to come in the hot climates. Well, so I'm coming to my last slide, I would say, is the control of environment is key to avoid the challenges. I know that it's a big investment at the beginning, but we have to try to do something, at least something to reduce the effect. There are simple and more complicated ways, but we have to start there because the rest of the solutions are going to be expensive. And at the end, we might invest a lot of money in feed, in products, in additive. When we making an initial investment, and I know it could be painful, can have a huge impact in the whole productivity. And it can be the difference between being profitable or struggling. Lighting programs always need to be adapted to the conditions, not only because of the type of production that we have, also for the environment that we have. We have seen is we might need to make a slow step down if we are not able to achieve the body weights of the pullet, because if we don't have a good pullet, a good body development of the pullet through the whole life of the production of this pullet, we are going to have problems in production. And nutrition, I have to tell you, in hot climates, the nutrition is more expensive. That's something that the nutritionists cannot change, because as we have low feed intake, we need to concentrate the diet. And that's an adaptation that we have to take into account. And also very important, the water temperature needs to be managed in this way. We are going to give some relief to the birds so we can mitigate the effects that we can have in some climate conditions, because even we know very clear is that sometimes the conditions are so harsh that even not the best equipment can overcome those situations, but at least we are going to mitigate everything. So thank you very much, and thank you for attending my presentation, and I hope, you can take a look on our new layer farming assistant that is going to be available 1st of December. So thank you, Rose, and I think I go back to you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Sabir. This is quite interesting that it's like the layer on the marathon, 100 week. As Dr. Sabir mentioned, it's about they are going to produce, if average is 60 grams, good, the best side of the story. So the chicken is going to produce the egg for you about 488 per layer. So that is really long life. And with Dr. Sabir mentioned, the genetic potential has to drive by the management, the feed intake, and also water, also one of the important element that Dr. Sabir mentioned many times about fresh water. And you need to teach your chick from the pullet, from the brooding time itself, to learn how to drink water. And we all know that the water intake would be about 1.5 to 2 times compared to the feed intake of the chick. That's why we have the seminar today with the prominent. I would like to introduce you guys to the next session, which is by Mr. Joshua Lusami. He is the technical manager of Prominent. He's going to touch a bit on the forgotten essential impacting poultry health and performance, which is all about water. So Mr. Joshua likes to answer you guys on the question and solve the problem related to the water. And his expertise is on the engineering, especially on the execution of water treatment. So ladies and gentlemen, we are going to hear from Mr. George for next 30 minutes on the forgotten essential impact poultry health and performance. So please, I over to you, Joshua.
Thank you, Rose. Okay. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending our seminar today. First of all, I would just like to introduce to you who Prominent is. I'm the technical manager for Prominent Malaysia and Singapore. Prominent is well known in the industry as an expert in metering technology and water treatment. Metering technology, to briefly describe it, it means chemical dosing. So this is chemical dosing pumps or systems. A bit of background on Prominent. We are grouped into 4 business units. The first 2 business units are metering technology or pumps. Business unit 1 is for low pressure and business unit 2 is for high pressure. Business unit 3 is for measurement and control technology. And this can be your water parameter monitoring, such as pH, ORP, chlorine, etc. Business unit 4 is on water treatment system and disinfection system. This is quite broad. We range from offering chlorine dioxide generators to salt, chlorine generation with salt electrolysis systems on site, and even UV systems for your needs. Prominent focuses on reliability. Our products are known to be durable. And on top of that, we ensure our service is up to par as well, as we are always informative and prompt in our response. Last but not least, availability is important to us, such that you, our customers, are able to reach us anytime globally. We have over 2,700 employees worldwide. Our headquarters is in Heidelberg, Germany, and we have over 55 subsidiaries with 12 production sites. We control our own production. Everything is in-house because we want to ensure that the standards that we offer is up to par. On this map here, you can see we are available in all countries. In Malaysia, in Singapore, we are a subsidiary, including Thailand. In Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam, we have our distributors, our well-known distributors there. And our customers are coming from a broad range of industries, because in every industry, you will definitely need chemical dosing, some sort of chemical dosing and water treatment systems. So we serve chemical vendors, food and beverage customers such as yourself, waterworks, municipal wastewater, swimming pool, and even energy and oil and gas. So we are quite familiar on a lot of manufacturing processes, a lot of industrial processes, but we realize that there is a need also in the poultry farms, where water is also essential, which then brings to the topic of my presentation today: water, the forgotten essential. Especially, I mean, you would have noticed in previous Xavier's presentation as well, water is critical. Where is water used in the farm? Water is used in the sanitation and the flushing of the pipes. Water is used to cool down the farm for the cooling systems, like, for example, if you have cooling pads. Water is an excellent carrier, because as the birds are drinking water, you can put in vaccines, medication, and supplements. Poultry like to drink water that's a little bit acidic. So water is also important for the acidification of water, and basically the general disinfection for hygiene and biosecurity of the farm. A simple consumption data that I have after talking to the experts in the industry is that poultry consumes twice as much water as feed, or in other words, about 40,000 birds consume 7 liters per minute of water in consumption. Now, believe it or not, poultry have their own acceptable water parameters that it is important for us to ensure these parameters are kept within limit, so that to ensure then your farm is properly supplied. By looking at this table over here, it might look very complex for someone who's not familiar with the chemistry of water treatment, but for us, these are very easy parameters that we can control and manage. And the purpose today is to provide that solution to the farm owners, so that they will be able to control and treat their water. Parameters that we want to monitor are pH, iron and manganese, lime, calcium, which are also known as hardness, and germs and bacteria. Why I picked those parameters is after going through the webinars and everything, we realized that most of the farms in Southeast Asia, especially the ones that are remote, which are most of them, their water source is from tube well. In other words, groundwater. Groundwater, when it's out of the ground, as you can see, it's very clean, it's very clear water. But then there are certain things that we cannot see, and those things include iron and manganese. Typically, groundwater is very high in iron and manganese. Some also are high in hardness, which are then explaining to you why sometimes you realize that your water is turning red or brown. It's coming from this inorganic metals. And also sometimes you wonder why your pipings are being blocked and why your nipple drinkers are being blocked and they're scaling. These are usually whitish scales, and these are caused by calcium or hardness. And of course, turbidity, which is basically how dirty the water is. We want to ensure all these are removed before we supply it to the poultry. But we realized that we do not want too complicated of a solution, that it becomes that it requires a lot of training and expertise to operate. But the parameters that we're talking about can be controlled and managed with several components from Prominent, and also with the package system, you're able to treat these parameters pretty much easily, and that is what I'm going to talk to you all next on this. So here is an example of a basic standard package. So just now we looked at the needs of what we need to treat on a tube well pot. Almost all tube well will have iron and manganese. So we came up with a basic package, which is what we would like to call as a plug-and-play system. So basically, the tube well piping will be connected to the inlet of the system. Water gets treated, and the outlet is then connected to your product storage tank. This can be an elevated tank, or it can be direct to your supply line. We also have a drain because we need to clean the filter when it gets dirty. So this system consists of a chemical tank over here to store chlorine, of a chemical dosing pump, which then doses the chlorine into the pipeline. We have a measurement and control system. Over here, we are monitoring the ORP of the water. I'll explain why we want to do this later. The good thing is, because of the controller and the pump, these are able to communicate together and ensure that the right amount of chlorine is entering your water. There's no overdosage and there's no underdosage. pH is important to monitor because of the chemistry of water. I'll explain why. And also we have a booster pump in order to supply you with sufficient pressure and also ensure that the flow rate of the system is kept constant. The flow rate is important because the next component in the system is a filter. And with the filter, you get then a clean water to your farm. The basic capacity of the system, a minimum is of 1,000 liters per hour on a skid form. Maximum you can go is about 3,000 liters per hour. Anything bigger is easily scalable in the sense that, but it might not be on a skid. We might consider it maybe in a container because just for the sake of shipping and logistics in that sense. So let's go through the treatment process so you understand why the package is arranged as such. The first thing we are doing is dosing chlorine. Chlorine is needed to oxidize the iron. Oxidation. What is oxidation? Oxidation is rather the state of the ion, right? For example, Fe2 plus is the oxidation state. If it becomes Fe3 plus, which in this case, this is Fe3, this ion has been oxidized. When water is underground, it's in a reduced state. Reduced is the opposite of oxidation. What does that mean? Inside the ground, the water is not exposed to oxygen. So because it's not exposed to oxygen, the iron inside the water is in a reduced state. Once it is pumped out, yeah, it is clear at the beginning, but if you keep that water outside, as it gets exposed to oxygen in the air, it turns brown. It means the iron is being oxidized into rust. That's what's happening in your pipes and in your tanks and in your drinkers and everything. And this is going through your filters if the iron is still in a reduced state. So how do we read this in chemistry terms? Oxidation and reduction can be measured as a value, and this value is known as ORP value. ORP stands for oxidation reduction potential. And this is denoted by voltage, right? The more reduced the water is, the lower the ORP value. So in this table or in this graph over here, as you can see, inside the groundwater, you have a low ORP value, and such, all of your ion, or most of your iron is in an aqueous state. Aqueous meaning ionic, and it's soluble, dissolved. That is why the water is clear. As you oxidize the water, the ORP value increases. This Fe2 plus becomes Fe3 plus, and it binds with an hydroxide ion, and it becomes rust, basically. And this is in a solid form. And this is why the iron comes out of solution. Of course, the pH also plays a role, but usually when your pH is around this level, and your goal over here is to increase the ORP value. And that is why we have an ORP measurement over here. By monitoring the ORP measurement and by dosing chlorine, we are ensuring that the ORP level is always above a certain limit. And by maintaining it above a certain limit, we can then be sure that most of the iron has been oxidized. How do you oxidize water? First, of course, the most easiest way is to put air into the water. You can aerate it with oxygen. This will require a large space because you need a big tank. You probably need a blower to aerate the water. Another way is to dose chemicals such as chlorine, and chlorine is an oxidant as well. Okay. Another thing I'd like to note here is that manganese, which is always accompanies iron because they come together usually, also has a similar graph, but the pH point for manganese is a bit more to the right. So as you know, acidic is to the left, alkali is to the right. So if you have too high manganese, pH needs to be controlled as well. That is why we have a pH monitoring system. And one thing to keep in mind, not every water will be the same. So the package is designed such that it's retrofittable. If your pH is varying based on season and you have a lot of manganese issue, then it is crucial that you have a pH adjustments chemical pump to dose into the tank. And by doing so, by increasing the pH, we are able to oxidize the manganese out. Okay, so that is the basis of monitoring ORP and pH. Which then brings me to the next slide, our controllers, which is monitoring these two parameters. One good thing about the controller is that you're able to set points and limit values. For example, the chlorine dosing pump will auto adjust to ensure that the ORP value is always achieved. So in this case, we want the ORP value to be above 0.6 volts or 600 millivolts. By ensuring that it's always above 600, then we can be sure that the reaction is sufficient. We can also set a high limit, because a higher limit will prevent if, let's say, you have a runaway dosing and your pump is dosing too high. It's a safety protection. A high limit could be 800 or more. That way you will know that there's no excessive chlorine in the water as well. Okay, which can be harmful for the birds, and also it can also damage your equipment due to the excessive chlorine. As I explained earlier, the pH monitoring ensures that you have a stable treatment. Even if you're okay with a pH that is fluctuating fairly stable, at least this data point gives you a monitoring purpose in such that when it does deviate, for example, during rainy seasons, and suddenly the groundwater is a bit acidic, we are able to still tweak the ORP value a bit higher in order to achieve a better oxidation reaction. Okay. And of course, if you have high manganese, pH needs to be adjusted higher. The next component in the system is the reaction tank. This reaction tank ensures that the oxidation reaction has enough time to oxidize almost all the iron and manganese out. Typically, we design the tank to give a time of about 4 to 6 minutes. Another reason is that it homogenizes the solution with the chlorine chemical that's being dosed, thereby ensuring the water is perfectly treated. Okay. The booster pump set, while it's a small component of the system, it's also critical. And we have made sure that you have all the requirements you need to have a system that doesn't need too much attendance and maintenance. For example, we have a pressure switch here. So if there's a need to close the outlet valve, or you need to backwash the filter, you don't have to turn off the pump. By detecting a high pressure, the pump stops itself. With a surge tank, any sudden closure of the valve on the outlet will not result in a high surge or a vibration to the piping, which then eventually leads to leakages. Because you have a booster pump now, you're able to deliver it to a high storage tank, or you can also directly deliver it to any line that you like to pressurize. Okay, and most importantly, it ensures it's a constant flow rate through the filter, which means it's a stable performance for the filter. And the last but not least, the last component of our filtration of our system is the filter itself. Filter vessels can come with many different types of media. Typically, it comes with sand. Sand, while it's better than nothing to have a filtration media, sand can be problematic in the long run if it's not operated properly. For example, sand has a filtration performance where it needs to be a certain size particle. Oh, that's what it's meant here, filtration to 1 micron. This micron particle is referring to the size of the particle that needs to be filtered out. What are the particles we want to filter out here? Is the iron that we have oxidized earlier. Iron that has just been oxidized will not be very big particles. They might even be colloidal at times. So in order to ensure that the product water is clean, we want to make sure that the media inside we have will be able to handle the colloidal iron carefully. So there are special medias for iron removal. They are called iron treat or Philox or manganese oxide. But what we are using here is an activated filtration media. The activated media basically not only does physical separation, but also it has surface charges on the media such that it's able to also filter particles electrostatically. Electrostatic is when you rub your hand and you realize that your hairs rise up. So basically imagine it in a very, very small, minute level between the media, and it attaches the dirt to the media. That's why we are able to achieve very low, or in other words, very high performance for the filtration capabilities. The fact that it says there's no bacterial growth is because this is activated glass. And the reason why we call it activated is because it is treated such that when it is in water, there is hydroxyl radicals on the surface of the media. With hydroxyl radicals are highly sterilizing. So in that sense, there's a self-sterilizing layer around the media. So bacteria is having difficulties trying to attach to the media. In that sense, these filters can last much longer than sand filters, because sand tends to be a perfect place for bacterial growth sometimes, especially if it is not cleaned or backwashed properly. So then you will have to replace the sand frequently. Yes. And the reason why we put so much thought into this is that we want the system to be a VLOM level. So in other words, a village level of operation and maintenance. The only thing that the operator or the farm owner does is turn a valve to backwash, and the system backwashes. There's no need to operate with a PLC control panel or motorized valves that will complicate the operation or any troubleshooting issues later on. Another thing we would like to add is that retrofitting options. As I mentioned, water is not the same in every different farm. There are issues sometimes. For example, you can have high hardness, calcium and magnesium. Some farms tube can contain high in fluoride and silica. Some can even contain very dangerous components like arsenic. So in that sense, while the base system is better than nothing, eventually we would want to be able to have a treatment system that is taking care of all the harmful stuff that's going into the farm. So that is why the system is highly retrofittable. First things first, which is our expertise, is the dosing station, the chemical dosing station. In this dosing station, as you can see, you can mount a dosing pump on top of the tank. You can even put a stirrer on the tank. So this gives you flexibility on what you want to dose. First thing that comes to my mind is pH adjustment. If you have manganese, you can add this to increase the pH. Another purpose for this is acidification. So we all know that the pH required for poultry is between 5 and 4. So it's a bit acidic because poultry prefer an acidic water. So then you can adjust the pH back down after the iron and manganese has been treated. This will ensure that the consumption of water from poultry is much better. If you need to vaccinate or medicate the farm, this is also another possibility, whereby if you have dedicated dosing station, there's less likelihood of contamination, cross-contamination, and you're able to put in and mix fixed volumes of solution using the stirrer and dose it into the line. Okay. You can add what measurement and control systems you need. For example, pH and ORP comes standard for the iron oxidation. If you need to monitor the chlorine levels in the water, the actual chlorine levels, the chlorine that was used before this was to oxidize. The chlorine that needs to be in the water in the tank is for disinfection. Same thing why our tap water contains chlorine. There's a certain small amount of chlorine. It's important because it prevents the entry of bacteria. It prevents the contamination of the water. The chlorine protects the water. So, but then again, we do not want too much chlorine because then it's counterproductive. So we have a chlorine sensor to ensure, we can have a chlorine sensor to ensure that the chlorine residue in the water is enough, such that the water is protected from bacterial contamination. Turbidity can also be monitored. Yes. And the good thing is our controllers are able to be linked to our to our dosing pumps. So you have a dosing pump that is now communicating with the controller. You no longer have to depend on manual adjustments of how much you need to dose. And by doing so, we can ensure there's a safe chemical consumption. Because controllers have fixed in, you can fix in limit points on your controller, you can prevent overdosing, and generally this guarantees your process safety. Hardness is an issue, but hardness can be easily resolved with a softener. A softener set consists of a vessel that contains the softener resin inside, and the calcium and magnesium in the water then attaches to the resin. And the good thing about the softener is that it can be regenerated. What does regeneration mean? Regeneration is basically backwashing the filter, but this time we are backwashing with a salt. And the salt is drawn from this brine tank. Salt is basically sodium and chloride. And those ions are going to displace the calcium and magnesium ions that was absorbed from earlier. Displacing those ions, we now have regenerated the resin. The softener can now be used again like new. So this needs to happen. A properly sized softener probably regens only once a week. You can set the timer here to regen every night, probably 2 a.m. in the morning. And it takes about 30 to 45 minutes to regen. And by doing so, we can now guarantee that the water coming out is soft water. There's no more calcium and magnesium. Usually the hardness outside the softener is less than 1 degree of hardness. So you basically have removed all. As long as the incoming of the calcium and magnesium hardness is not more than 15 degrees of hardness. Okay, anything more, of course, you probably need to add another treatment step before this. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. We have QR codes over here. You can scan this. This will bring you to our websites and our social media links. Please do follow us. We do post some informative articles from time to time, which you can keep up to date. Thank you.
All right, thank you, George. And that is very technical detail in its aspect. Start from hardness and ion and accumulating in a pipe. We have few questions already come in. Let me invite Dr. Sabir to join in the Q&A session here. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, after this Q&A session, if you are going to join the networking session with the prominent country representative, please click on the link on the chat later on. Okay, we will bring you to the breakout room for discussion in detail with the country-specific requirement. So right now, Dr. Sabir with us, Mr. George with us. I would like to start the first question to Sabir. Sabir, there is the question on the what kind of supplement that the flock should be given if the flock is under heat stress?
Well, I would say if we are going to do from in the water, definitely the first thing is to reduce the temperature of the water, as I have explained. And the other one, we can try to do some supplementation of vitamins and minerals, try to reduce it. But I mean, it's just going to be short-term type of situation because, I mean, we have to work in more deeper problem. I mean, the heat stress is continuously happen in Southeast Asia. So we need to think about in a long-term solution instead of a one-day solution.
It's like heat stress is like need to check all the aspect, even the management, the temperature, water, and the feed. Nutrition.
Yes, I mean, but what I mean is that, I mean, in Southeast Asia, you are going to be always above 30 degrees. Yep. You don't have cold temperature. So it means that when you have heat stress, it's every day, not one day. Yeah. So you need to work every day about it.
So, but H&N already produced the genetic that is good for the tropical country.
Yeah, I mean, our birds are adaptable, but I mean, we have to realize, as we said, is that, I mean, the birds are comfortable at 24, 22 degrees. If you put them at 30, okay, the birds can adapt, and our birds can adapt to that one, but it's not going to be as comfortable as 22 degrees.
Yeah. So dig in more details, Sabir. Can you share some experience that the country like Vietnam, which is Hanoi, it's very cold. Ho Chi Minh is very hot. How you introduce the layer management to those groups?
Well, I mean, at certain point is that you have, I mean, the birds by themselves, they can adapt very well to different changes of the temperature. The challenge is when you keep in that temperature for a long time. Okay, so in the case of Hanoi, if in winter is a little bit colder, you are going to have better production, so you don't need to worry, and you are going to probably save money in ventilation. In Ho Chi Minh, you are going to spend more money in ventilation because you have to reduce the temperature. So, I mean, I think you have to adapt the management, as you said, the nutrition, and your business decisions at the end to wherever you are.
All right, thank you, Sabir. Come to George. George, the question comes when you present about the water have like iron content. So the question pop up asking, do you think usage of chlorine can help to reduce the piling of iron content in the pipe? This is a situation that yet to install any treatment system, but okay. It's there, you know. So
I understand. Yeah. The reason why you have piling, like I explained earlier, iron comes out of solution when you oxidize. If you don't remove it after you oxidize, it will pile in the pipe. It's important to dose the chlorine, and it's important to remove by filtration so that it doesn't oxidize in your pipe, in your drip, in your drinkers, in your equipment. So just chlorine alone will not resolve it. As a matter of fact, it might make it worse because you are oxidizing, but you're not removing. So it's going to block much higher. Yes.
So what is your recommended solution?
Recommended solution is definitely a filtration system and the chlorine dosing prior to the filtration system. That way you can be sure that once the iron oxidizes, it filters and you have iron-free water or low water to your supply. And that way it won't accumulate.
All right. So now I will go one question to both Sabir and Josh. Sabir, you may have experienced already a lot of farm using well water. So from your experience visiting in Asia Pacific on the layer farm or broiler farm that use well water source. So what is the key target water quality that in a farm management perspective from a poultry specialist do you see? And then I will go to Josh that how to handle those water issue. Yeah.
I think the first parameter that we have to think about it is going to be microbiology, because at the end that's going to have an impact in the gut health. And at the end, the gut is, if we have good gut health, we are going to have good nutrient intake and we are going to have good performance. So if you tell me one thing I will choose, I would go with the microbiology. But I guess, I mean, Joshua has more expertise in this one, but I mean, from the point of view of practicality, I will go with that one.
Sorry, you're muted, Rose. Can you?
Josh, Sabir mentioned that from well water, he from his experience, like the first thing to manage is about microbial, microbial in the water. So now from his management practice, now it's from water treatment practice. So how you see that the farmers should touch on before getting into the microbial effect in the chicken.
No, it's perfectly right. Water needs to be treated of microbes or bacteria, but microbes are very tricky in the sense that they tend to hide. They don't want to be killed. So if you have a lot of iron and a lot of particles for the bacteria to hide, they will not be treated. So for example, if you dose chlorine before treating the iron, the chlorine will go to oxidize the iron rather than kill the bacteria. And unfortunately, chlorine is not good as well, because when the water is dirty, the more chlorine you add, the more byproducts it forms. And if you can search, it will form what you call THMs, trihalomethanes, and these are cancerous in the long run. So we have to be careful of how much chlorine we dose. So that's why it's important to treat just enough of chlorine to remove the iron, and then a bit more chlorine to ensure there's residual chlorine so that the bacteria doesn't come into your pipe. Of course, there are other things that need to be considered. For example, farms that have been operating for so long, they probably need to flush the pipeline first before they consider dosing the chlorine, because you already have bacteria in the pipe already. You probably have some biofilm and slime inside. So you probably need to remove all that and then start your treatment new. So yes, I agree, microbes have to be removed, but they can only be done after the iron removal.
So I think now we are talking about two things. It's just the water from well water that have microbial, then past the treatment. And also it's possible that microbial on the pipeline, the drinking drinking water in the pipeline. So now I will ask Sabir, like Sabir, any recommendation for the farms, like to handle how frequent, how often they should really look at their drinking water pipeline, because the chicks stand there for 100 weeks. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, that's something that I think Joshua said, is you have to choose the right product to make the treatments, the right method based on the quality of the water you are having. And then when we go to the pipes, okay, the basic manual says you have to clean your pipes before the chicks are coming. I mean, that's the basics. But as we know very well, is this is very minimal. But now, as we get for a long time the birds, we have to think about more in a long term. So probably we don't need to wait to flush until the next flock. Okay, and definitely now there are some solutions where you can do some flushing without being so messy, because sometimes the farmers don't want to do flushing because it's messy. You get water everywhere and things like that. But now I think there are some interesting technological solutions that can help you to do some flushing from time to time. And I think it's probably in the long term is the best solution.
Sorry, I heard some of organic acid may help also.
Yeah, I mean, then the products, I mean, then we can choose the different products, okay? But I mean, the flushing is the first step, and then you have to, because as Joshua said, first you have to remove the biological matter. I mean, it's like when we disinfect our farm. If we don't clean the farm, no matter how many disinfectant you put, the disinfectant is not going to work. So
but most of the time,
yeah, and with the pipes and with the water it happens the same. If you don't remove certain amount of the biological matter, whatever you put is not going to work.
Most of the time, the farmers will come to you, Sabir. I want one shot, clean also, chicken drink also.
Yeah, but I mean, I would say it's like, okay, I want to win the lottery in one try. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I mean, you can try, but I think we know very well that it's not easy. So I think with the rest of the things, it's the same pattern.
Yeah. Josh, any add-on?
Yes, like Dr. Zabir just said, there are technologies now where you don't need to flush the pipes so often, in the sense that just like humans, bacteria tend to form barriers, or they tend to protect themselves by getting killed by chlorine. That's why they form the slime. The slime then protects the bacteria from the chlorine attacking them. There are options available to remove, to prevent slime formation, whereby the bacteria itself is completely destroyed. Those type of chemicals are called chlorine dioxide, for example. So a small amount of chlorine dioxide in the pipe will ensure that the bacteria have no time to protect itself with slime. So by doing so, you remove the need to flush for your pipes to remove the slimes. That is one possibility. Yes.
Now we have some question. Go to Dr. Sabir. I think it is about, do you think the laying hen is in acidosis or alkalosis state under heat stress?
Heat stress is alkalosis.
Okay, so very clear. Heat stress is alkalosis. So that's from Dr. Sabir. And Sabir, one more. I think this one is from Vietnam. The question is, what is the relationship of housing climate and food feed consumption? He wants you to explain more about that in like very easy to understand for him.
Yes, okay, so I think in my presentation, if you see it, is that every time that beyond 26 degrees, okay, you are going to have a reduction of 5 kilocalories of energy intake. So in between, what we say is between 26 and 31, you are going to have a drop of 5 kilocalories. So that's a lot from the point of view. I mean, if you think about it, that one brown hen needs 314 kilocalories per day. If you are reducing already 5 kilocalories, it has a big impact on the productivity. So the relationship is every time that your house cannot keep the temperature below 26, you are going to have a drop of 5 kilocalories per bird of energy intake. And that's going to have the impact.
And that means we will waste feed if the farm calculate the total feed, then the feed left over.
No, what is going to happen is the bird is not eating because she cannot. Okay, so the productivity is going down. So then the farmer is going to say, this feed is not good because my bird is not eating.
Yeah.
So the farmer is going to say, change me the feed. So the nutritionist is going to say, oh, the feed intake is low. I'm going to concentrate the diet. So it means that the farmer is going to pay more expensive feed. Because every time that we make it a more concentrated diet, it's going to be more expensive.
Yeah. All right, clear. So the farmers should check the temperature in the farm.
Yes, as long as they can keep it,
Yeah.
as long as they can keep it as close as possible to 26 or below 26, they will save money in feed.
All right.
Or let's say they will save money in cost of the production. The cost of the production is going to be more effective. Productive.
So to the audience, if you're not clear, Dr. Sabir will give you the email, can reach to him as well for the further clarification and guide on the technical session. So Josh, the question this come to you, I think about hydrogen peroxide. Can you use hydrogen peroxide for water and pipeline cleaning, and at what concentration, Josh?
Yes, hydrogen peroxide are being used for disinfection of pipes. I might not be familiar with how they are done in the farms, but usually they can range from 100 ppm to even more than 500 ppm of hydrogen peroxide. The thing to keep in mind with H2O2 is that it's a very strong oxidizer. So it tends to attack everything. So make sure your pipings are suitable to take hydrogen peroxide at that concentration. If not, those will be damaged. And secondly, H2O2 is also, it can disintegrate very fast when it's in transport or storage. So it's very difficult to stop. So yes, possible to use, but there are some concerns with H2O2.
But Josh, before they are going to use, what is your recommendation that the pre-process before implement anything? What parameter they have to check before they move to that?
So basically, for any chemicals, whether it's H2O2 or whether it's a chlorine solution or a chlorine dioxide solution, for pipe cleaning, it's always necessary that you move, not just soak the pipe, but you also circulate the pipelines. That will need a small little tank which you pump through the pipelines and then you return back to the tank. In that way, you can save the place from becoming messy, like Dr. Xavier said earlier. Another way is to actually monitor how much concentration of disinfectant we are putting into the pipe. That way we will know we are not overdosing and we are not underdosing. And as you circulate, you are also ensuring that you don't have any dead zones in the pipe as you move. So this is what I would recommend when you're flushing. And definitely after doing so, it's also crucial that you flush away the chemical. So again, you have to be circulating it and removing it, not just a once through. so that you don't have the residual chemicals going to your birds or your poultry.
All right. So Josh, thank you. So back to the last question to Sabir. This one very general. I believe the audience asked in very general term that what is the common disease encounter and how is it addressed? I assume it's under hot climate. What will be the common disease that happen?
Well, I mean, if it's the common disease, would be the heat stress, no? If we define as a disease, no? I mean, the heat stress means that the bird is going to be immunosuppressed. So probably the disease is going to be immunosuppression, because the bird is going to be weak and is going to be more exposed to any disease that can come. I think probably the best answer to is in the hot climate conditions, the biggest disease is the immunosuppression.
Okay, and the heat stress lead to many diseases.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, the heat stress, it's like immunodepression. The vaccines, they don't work so good. The antibodies are going to be lower, so that triggers whatever comes that day. Yeah.
All right. So the last question to Josh before we are going to networking session. This is directly to Prominent. Can the Prominent system stop ion clogging in the pipeline?
Yes, that is what we have designed it for. You will see we actually put a reaction tank in the middle after the chlorine dosing. That is to ensure whatever comes out of the water is coming out inside the tank, which happens about 4 to 6 minutes. And before that, before it's supplied, we filter it. So it's 2 steps: react and ensure the reaction time is achieved. And secondly, ensure the filtration system removes whatever you have removed. And this ensures that there's no ion after the filter, because your reaction has already completed in the 6 minutes before. The reason why it happens in the pipe is that 6 minutes is happening in the pipe. You don't give it enough time to react. So yes, the system is meant to remove it.
All right. So Josh already mentioned very clear that the system of Prominent design to prevent the clogging in the pipeline, but it's about the reaction time and the intermediate equipment. And today, on behalf of Prominent, I thanks to Prominent team and Dr. Sabir. And as Dr. Sabir mentioned, please follow the HNN KAI, which is opening in 1st of December. Follow them on their Facebook, their LinkedIn. They already promote the KI, the system. And also with Prominent, you guys can join the networking session by country. The click will be on the chat box. So today, I would like to thank Sabir and Josh for the session today, very helpful. And we will put the email of Sabir and Josh in the chat box. You can reach to both HNN and Prominent. Thank you so much and have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.